Hello. Hi. Hope you're doing well. If you're new here, thank you for being here. If you're not new here, thank you for coming back. What's up? So, we're just going to get straight into it. What we're going to talk about today is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. I just haven't, to be quite frank with you, I just haven't mustered up the energy to record this. This has been on my mind for the last week or so. Suffering succotash. Why do we create it for ourselves? What is the deal with suffering? Personally, I find it to be a quite empowering subject. The idea that we create our own struggles, we create our own problems. But I imagine there are people out there who get upset, who get in a tizzy when they hear stuff like that. It's what do you mean? I create my own suffering. I created this. This is my fault. The ones who don't want to really take accountability. I understand, I get it. But in my opinion, that's where the true strength comes from. Being able to recognize that you do have a part in the pain that you're experiencing. You do have a part in the suffering that you're creating and that you're experiencing, excuse me. And obviously, you can disagree with that. I tend to encourage free thought most of the time, so believe what you want. But I like to look at things from different perspectives. So we could say very easily that yes, it is your fault. It is your responsibility to not create suffering and chaos in your own life. We could say that. But then the other perspective is that we also recognize that there are external influences that affect us, that make us want to do things and whatnot. And I say make us. I'm trying to be very careful with my wording because nobody can make you do anything, right? That's, once again, you create your own suffering. And once again, I guess there are situations where people are just it's kind of objectively I didn't choose this. I was forced into this. But then from a spiritual, from a soul level perspective, it's but didn't you choose this? And once again, I totally get why people get upset at this. I totally get it, because it's what do you mean I chose this? What do you mean I signed up for this? I was consensual to this. That doesn't make sense. And I don't know, a lot of cosmic law, a lot of this higher understanding shit doesn't really make logical sense in our 3D world. It doesn't. It really doesn't. Also, it goes without saying, I hope the audio is okay because it's not windy, but it's kind of windy here and there. And I'm I have my hand over the speaker. I don't know where it picks up audio from. I'm pretty sure it picks up audio from the phone, obviously, but gosh golly, I didn't do a test for this. Because low-key, I'm also talking from the perspective of someone who used to do meth. That drug that everybody's let's not do that. It's slightly worse than crack, a little bit less worse than heroin. I used to do that, and also I didn't do heroin though. That was not something that I was interested in. Not to say that there's a hierarchy of what you should and shouldn't be doing, but just for the record, because I hung out with a lot of people who did that and also did crack, and both those are two things I didn't care for. Once again, it's not on no shame shit. It is what it is. I didn't really care for that. But I digress. I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who used to do that. And somebody who, even through doing that, still was participating in activities to kind of up-level my life. I was working on books. I was writing books. I was working on social media. I was doing a lot of different things that... I imagine the people that I was serving would have looked at me differently if they knew that I was doing that. And I don't know. It's come to light now. And side note, I recently came to the understanding. I was watching this video, and they were basically saying, I'm not a Christian. Today's Sunday. I'm not a Christian, but I do consume a lot of Christian content. I do like to watch Christian philosophers and whatnot, and there's this channel, and they were basically saying that the way to overcome sexual lust is basically, or to overcome any sin, honestly, is to bring it to light regularly, not to like hide it in the dark. And when I heard that, it really clicked. I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, and that's something I've always kind of done. Like, I'm not one to necessarily shy away from being like, oh yeah, I'm kind of, I mean, obviously context is important. Obviously some situations don't call for me to like be vulnerable about my suffering. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. I wanted to share that. But because a really painful truth is that most of us would rather go through like permanent pain rather than just going through the short, quick, I chose this pain, you know, because like, for example, like when you're walking away from a toxic situation, I mean, drugs are a toxic situation, I guess, but I'm talking like a relationship, like a human relationship. Sometimes we walk away from these situations, what the fuck? And I lost my train of thought. There was a really loud car. You probably heard that. And then also one of them looked at me and it kind of threw me off for a second. What was I saying? Yeah, when you're in a toxic human relationship and then like you have to walk away for whatever reason, most people don't walk away because that walking away is just as painful. Is just as painful as staying on for the long ride. But the thing is, in those situations, staying on for the long ride is a lot more detrimental, but you just don't notice because it's like a catch-22. It's like a double-edged sword. It's like either way, whatever I choose, I'm going to get hurt. So it's like, I guess I might as well choose the one that makes more sense, right? But from the perspective I just gave, it doesn't really make much sense, you know? Because I remember I used to like ponder this idea a little bit ago, and I used to be like, you know, if suffering is a part of the process and I get to choose it, then like, do I really get to choose it? Because either way I'm suffering, you know? But I don't know. Also, one philosophy of like suffering, the idea of suffering, is that it's really just a mindset whether or not you suffer. Because then some people say that suffering and being in pain are two different things. Because then I was thinking about like, before I recorded this, when I first conceptualized this, one of the things I was thinking was the idea of someone being in like a torture room and being tortured. And I was basically like, that would be torture, or that would be suffering, right? Because it's continuous, like, you know, conflict and agitation and all that stuff. But as long as I found a way to enjoy it, then I think that could be not classified as suffering. If I could find a way to be content with the situation, then that's not suffering. You know, but if you know, find yourself in a situation and you're like feeling miserable and you're feeling like really miscontent, then it's like, that's probably not. I mean, it probably is suffering. I don't know. I'm sorry, semantics. I don't think that I would actively tell someone that, hey, it's all your fault that you're in pain right now. I wouldn't actively tell someone that unless I knew that they were like ready to absorb that, because that's a big realization. And that's why a lot of people move away from that realization, move away from self-awareness, because when you realize certain things, oftentimes you have to change, or you feel called to change things about your life, and that can be painful in itself, you know? And once again, most people would rather go through, how do I say this, the suffering that is like secured and like comfortable and familiar, rather than like trying something new. I'm walking past, it's not really ironic or funny, but it is kind of ironic and funny. Also, sorry about the wind once again, but I'm walking past a rehab facility as I'm talking about this. You know, when we talk about creating our own suffering. Another way that I feel we create our own suffering is by ignoring our intuition. You know, I think like way too many of us, once again, sorry about the fucking wind, I feel it. I hope that you can hear what I'm saying over this. The way I see it, when you ignore your intuition, that intuition gets lessened, you know, and then it's harder to navigate, it's harder to rely on it because you don't listen to it in the first place. So it's kind of like having kind of like having a human relationship, you know? If you start taking somebody for granted, if you start, like, stepping over somebody, eventually there comes a point where they don't want to give you that advice. They don't want to help you out. They don't want to, like, be friendly to you because you keep burning them. And it's like, I don't think our intuitions have feelings, per se. But I like to think of any relationship as like any relationship. You know, like the relationship that you have with spirit is the same relationship that you could have with a human. You know, it's like, obviously it's different because there's not a physical vessel in front of you usually, but you know what I mean? You know what I mean. My favorite song right now that I've been listening to on repeat, low-key, sorry, there's like pressure coming up, is the song Fire Escapes. It's plural, not singular, because I thought it was singular. But Fire Escapes by Winona Oak, I think that's how you say her name. I love that song. It's basically about somebody who's like coming to the realization or like talking about being vulnerable about the idea of them running away from love, running away from relationships, because they keep getting hurt, they keep getting burned, so they keep making fire escapes. And it's so pretty. I think the delivery is beautiful. I think the sonics are amazing. Like, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful song. And like, that's also another way that people create their own suffering. They run away from things that like scare them. And like, I'm guilty of this too. I'm not excluded from this, obviously. But that is part of what makes us, you know, regret things in life, because we ran away from things when it seemed unstable. We ran away from things when it didn't make sense, you know? And sometimes life doesn't make sense. Sometimes you got to dive into the unknown, you know what I mean? But I'm also saying this as a person with a lot of Virgo in his chart, as someone who likes predictability and someone who likes structure and like routine and shit. Like, though I am a Gemini, I am a Gemini Sun and a Gemini Mercury, so there is that element of chaos and whatever, but whatever. You know, this is kind of, I feel like this is a little bit of a chaotic video. I always call these chaotic videos, and I feel like I interpret it as chaotic because there's chaos in my head as I'm doing these. There's a lot going on in here, but I don't know. As I'm recording, I went sober for like 2 days. Not because I wanted to. I mean, I did want to, but not because I wanted to, not because it was a conscious choice, but because I didn't have the means to get any more marijuana. And so that's been a thing for me the last couple of days. Technically right now, I guess we could say that I'm sober. I smoked earlier in the day, and then I took a nap. Well, I did other stuff, and then I took a nap, and then I took another nap, and now I'm taking a walk, so I haven't smoked yet. And that's an A+ for me, actually, because once again, I have a thing when it comes to substances, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm not afraid to, you know, talk about it, because I definitely believe now in that thing that I mentioned earlier. Like, when you bring your sins to light, it kind of nullifies it. You know, I'm not saying you have to share your sins with strangers, but like, when you bring it to light, when you use it to help somebody else or to like connect with somebody else, I think it definitely like alleviate some of the pain that you feel from it, you know what I mean, the shame and whatnot. Because I don't know if you know, but I actually wrote an ebook. I wrote 2 ebooks actually, and I have more stuff in the works. But one of the ebooks that I wrote is a very informational book. Took me quite a while to write. I was writing it while I was homeless, while I was doing math also. And in that book, I wrote a lot about my experience with drugs and like homelessness and like how I feel like I overcame it, you know? And that's my way of like kind of like alleviating that, you know? Because we all have a struggle, we all have a testimony to tell, you know? It's just a matter of building up the courage for a lot of us to just share it, you know? Because that's a lot of our problems. Like, we're too scared, we're too afraid. I feel like there's a lot we could talk about when it comes to suffering, for sure. But I don't know, like, I feel like the energy that I've been in, the energy that I've been living in, per se, is not the most conducive for my creativity. So when I get around to making these videos, I kind of have to, like, put in a little bit of extra effort, because I don't know, I just feel like there's so much mental energy going on, or just general energy. I don't know if that makes sense, if that translates, but maybe that's an excuse. I don't know, because I did muster up the energy to start recording. I don't know. And my goal for this was to make it like 20 minutes, but I don't think this is going to be 20 minutes. I'm just going to end this here. I hope that this was helpful. I hope this was useful. You know? Keep your head up. Know that, like, whatever storm you're facing is temporary. Nothing lasts forever, for better or for worse. And even though you sometimes feel like it, just know that you're never alone. You always have divine assistance at your fingertips. I don't know why I said fingertips, but you know what I mean. At your grasp, at your beck and call, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, I hope this is helpful. Deuces.